I am Kristen Clark, the president of the Washington County Republican Women, and this with me today is Celeste Maloy, member of the Washington County Republican Women and legal counsel to Congressman Chris Stewart. We are here today because of our promise to bring you accurate information from reliable sources. Celeste was in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. So we are here today to hear about her experience. Celeste, can you just begin by describing what happened that day and what you saw?
Sure. I was at work that day in the Cannon House office building. So our offices are in the House office building that's the closest to the Capitol. We knew that there was going to be a large protest that day. They'd encouraged all of us to park in the garages and work from home if we could. So some of our team was at home, some of us were at work. The day started off kind of somber, actually. None of us knew what was coming, but that morning we knew that Democrats now controlled the Senate. So we didn't have the House, we didn't have the Senate, and we didn't have the White House. We spent the morning talking about what we could do legislatively this Congress, and sort of trying to game plan that. We had Chick-fil-A for lunch, and we were all at our conference table eating lunch and talking about our legislative goals when the Capitol Police came and knocked on our office door and told us to get out of the building. We still didn't know what was going on, and nothing had happened at the Capitol yet. The first pipe bomb they found was close to our building, so they evacuated the Cannon building before anything really started at the Capitol. So we had to leave our building, but we were just in the tunnels that connect all of the office buildings with the Capitol. And we thought, they'd let us back in an hour or so. So we were just standing in the tunnels. So I didn't see a lot of what happened except on the news, just like everybody else, but I'll tell you about what I did see. They accidentally let us back in the building for a little while. The Capitol Police sent out an email that said we could go back in, and it was premature. So we all went back in our building, and we knew that the protest had moved from the White House to the Capitol by then. So a couple of us went up to the second floor to look out the windows that look out to the Capitol, not knowing how things were going. And we saw the big crowd out there, and we kind of laughed to each other that, we're getting tired of witnessing history happen. We'd like to get back to legislating. And it was about then that the Capitol Police swept us again and got us out of the building. This time when we left, we saw Capitol Police forming up, getting information to head into the Capitol. And that's when we started to realize something was going on besides just that they had found a bomb near our building. And I don't know if I've ever seen grown men look so scared in my life. So I've seen a lot of things on TV since then. And it's been a couple of weeks now, 3 weeks now. And so a lot of my memories are now tainted by what I've learned since then. But I remember at the time thinking, these guys seem terrified. And I thought it was weird at the time because all year there have been protests going on across America. And it was never my team that was protesting. And we kept wondering why Democrats weren't saying more and condemning the protests and the riots going on across the country. And we kept saying, our people don't protest, or our people don't riot. They protest, but they don't riot. We didn't think that was gonna happen. And the hardest thing for me about January 6th was watching what I thought I knew be proved wrong. And even so we ended up being locked down in the complex until about 11:30 that night. And even while I was still locked down, I started getting a lot of phone calls and texts from people I know asking, is this a false flag attack? Is this really Antifa? Trump supporters don't do this. And I spent a lot of time that day just telling people, yeah, these are Trump supporters. It's a big crowd. There's 10,000 people there. I'm sure there are a variety of people in the crowd, but by and large, this was a Trump support protest, and the mob mentality took over, and they did things that I don't think any of them would have seen themselves doing before, and I don't think they would have done if they'd had time to think about it. So that's the main reason I agreed to do this interview, is that I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 weeks talking to people that I know and trust and love who just can't believe that it really happened. And as someone who was there, I feel a responsibility to tell people what I saw. So I wasn't on the Capitol grounds. I wasn't on the lawn. A good friend of mine left the building and couldn't get back in, but the complex was locked down. And he walked around through the crowd for a couple of hours and talked to people. And he said, they're the kind of people we went to high school with. They're just your average person. But the crowd's starting to get really wound up. And everybody's seen the footage on the news now. Everybody knows what happened. But I know a lot of people still doubt how it started. And so that's what I saw of how it started. It was a protest at the White House. It moved to the Capitol. And then it got carried away and out of hand. And people did things that I don't think they ever would have done if they'd have thought about it beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time that you felt like you were in danger personally?
No, which might be a sign of mental handicap on my part. I kept telling people I feel like I'm safe because I'm behind the police barriers, but the Capitol was behind the police barriers and it ended up not being safe. I never felt like I was personally in danger, but one time, one of my coworkers and I went down to a vending machine because we were just sitting for hours. We couldn't leave. We were in the Longworth building because we couldn't go back in Cannon and we couldn't leave. We went down to the vending machines and we saw 3 Capitol policemen came running up the stairs past us, and they were sweaty, and one of them was bloody, and they had mud on their backs, and it was clear that they had been in physical altercations with people, and they looked really scared. And that was the only time I really felt like I might personally be in danger, if the Capitol Police were running past me away from the crowd. But then as soon as they went past us, several more went the other way going in. And I didn't feel like I was ever going to be physically harmed. It was mostly emotionally scary to watch people get into the Capitol building. And I was in Utah last week, and I talked to a lot of people, and I noticed that wasn't as shocking to a lot of people in Utah as it was to those of us who were here. And I found that kind of discouraging too, that when it's far removed, it's easy to downplay. But the fact that the actual Confederate Army never got into the US Capitol, but we had Trump supporters carrying a Confederate flag into the Capitol in 2021 was sort of soul crushing. It was a rough day and a hard thing to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Because what does the Capitol represent to you? What does our US Capitol represent to you?
Well, we had spent a lot of time that week talking about, we were getting a lot of phone calls at the office from people who felt like the election had been stolen. And we spent a lot of time talking about how proud we are that even when we all disagree, we accept the outcome of elections and we have peaceful transfer of power, and that Americans support the institutions of our country more than we support people. We don't get behind dictators. Our loyalty isn't even primarily to the Republican Party, it's to America. And watching people go into the Capitol like that felt like they were proving me wrong on all of those beliefs.
Mm-hmm, for sure. So we're just about out of time here, but I wanted to ask you, Celeste, if you have any parting words for us, any advice for us here in Washington County.
That's a good question. I guess my last thought would be, I see now why it was so tempting all summer for Democrats to keep their mouths shut about rioting that was going on across the country, and why they wanted to distance themselves from it. Because it feels like I don't have anything in common with those people. They lost their minds. I've never done that. But I think it's important that we acknowledge what happened and accept that it happened, and not try to talk ourselves out of learning the lessons from it. And I can already see it starting. It's been a few weeks now, things are moving on, and people are starting to try to talk themselves out of feeling upset about what happened. And I think that's a mistake.
Okay, I agree, Celeste. Thank you again for sharing your time with us and for being willing to share your story. That took courage, and we're really grateful to you.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to being back in St. George with you guys soon.
Good. We're looking forward to seeing you in real life.